everybody. My name is Dr. Emily Valchetis, and I'm an associate professor of psychology at New York University.
And I'm Usman Liakath. I'm a current graduate student in our social psychology program here at NYU.
I know a lot of people who apply to our program have a question about what kinds of content they should showcase or highlight in their application materials. And some people have that question because their background they might call unconventional or non-traditional. Some of their personal or professional or research experiences might not seem to lie at the heart of what social psychology is all about. But I and many of the faculty disagree. We think that there's a lot of value that these maybe untraditional experiences can actually bring to the table, and a lot of opportunities for preparation for successful graduate training that those provide. So I think, Usman, that describes in part your background, right?
Absolutely, yes. Before joining the program, I spent 2 years as a copy editor at a news desk in Pakistan, my home country. So that was my non-traditional experience.
That's great. Yeah, I remember learning that about you, and actually I found that really exciting. It definitely stood out because it was such a different experience. And what would you say it was about your time as a journalist that prepared you for graduate study?
So there are two elements really over here, specific elements that I can talk about that really helped me in graduate school and that I demonstrated to the admission committee that I had coming in from such a non-traditional background. So the first element is writing. In graduate school, you're going to be writing papers, submitting them to journals, getting feedback from journal editors. And it turns out that a lot of the stuff that I did on the news desk, which was working on these long form features, editing them for clarity and making sure that the audience really got what I was talking about. There were lots of complex issues that we had to talk about, such as governance structures within Pakistan and levels of government, which the audience might not necessarily understand. It's quite similar to scientific writing in that sometimes your audience needs to be explained some of the phenomena that you're writing about in a very clear and precise manner. So I talked about some of that in my application and how that was a strength going into the program, given that we as scientists also write a lot to a variety of audiences.
I would agree. Yeah, when I was reading that in your application, I thought, okay, he's bringing to the table a background of experiences in professional writing. Of course, there's many ways to get that experience, and you found it through journalism. But you're exactly right that that's something that we value within the program, is somebody who has experience with writing and who can demonstrate it in whatever way they can. And for you, that was through your previous career in journalism. Another thing that we're looking for is a real understanding of your interests, what it is that you want to study in graduate school. And was there anything about your career that helped inform what you wanted to study?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And that's the second point that I alluded to earlier. So when I was a part of the news desk, I was covering a range of issues that happened within the city. So things like intergroup conflict, things like gender issues within politics. And I was very interested generally in the topic of intergroup conflict and stereotyping. And being on the news desk allowed me to really see those unfold in the real world and really think about how those certain things that I came across hadn't been addressed in previous literature. So I talked about some of the questions that arose in my mind as a non-traditional individual in my application. I was like, wait a minute, social psychology really hasn't addressed this specific question that I encountered as a journalist. And so really, use my experience to inform some of the questions that I was asking in my application.
When we were reading that application, I and many of the faculty were really struck by how you could see these issues playing out in the real world and approach them through the lens of a journalist and through a scientist. And so to us, we read that as evidence of your real commitment to studying these issues. And we were really excited to see how you could connect the science to the real world. And we're excited yourself to try to solve some of these problems that you were seeing around you. Now, a lot of people also ask that question then of like, if I've had these experiences and I do see the value in my previous career or seemingly apparently or seemingly irrelevant other life or research experiences, where do I tell people about that? How do I tell the people who are reading my application materials that I do think that this has prepared me for graduate study in any particular way? How did you do it?
So I really allowed this experience to sort of shine and speak for me in the personal statement section of my application. It was listed on my CV, but I really wanted to connect my experience as a journalist to preparation for graduate school. And so I included a paragraph in my personal statement about how some of these experiences helped me. And so I explicitly stated how, as a journalist, I was trained in copy editing and writing long form features for different audiences and passing down complex information into like neat packets that you present to different audiences. And how that relates to the scientific enterprise. So there were just a couple of sentences on that, how that specific skill translates into the work of a scientist and how that prepared me for graduate school. Similarly, I talked about, from this experience in journalism, I talked about intergroup conflict that I was seeing within Pakistan, where people had a multiplicity of different identities. And so a lot of social psychology research is carried out looking at only one identity. Whereas when I was a journalist in Pakistan, I saw that sometimes in a given situation, multiple aspects of an individual's identity are at play, especially in intergroup conflict. So specifically religion and ethnic identity, in my case as a journalist in Pakistan, I saw that pop out. So I explicitly made a reference to that in my application and said, well, look, social psychology still has some way to go to address this specific nuance, where we look at multiple identities, and I incorporated that into my application.
Well, thank you, Usman, for sharing your insights here. Hopefully other people find them useful too.
All right, great. Happy to share.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Yeah.